Now that the DCEU is truly and finally over, yes, Snyder fans, it's over. Please let it go. It's time we give you the definitive movie rankings for the 16 films in this universe. I am Doc John, and we here at the Lapse Geek Podcast have to tell you that this list wasn't easy to compile, as there were some truly terrible films on this list, as well as some really good ones. Think we're wrong? We know you do. Tell us in the comments. Have a different favorite you think should have won the top spot? Let us know. But let's stop messing around and get to the list. Number 16, Wonder Woman, 1984. It says a lot about a movie when it ranks as the worst among this pile of mediocre to terrible, but Wonder Woman 1984 lives up to the billing. A nonsensical plot about the mercurial quality of wishes was the least of this sequel's problems. It simply assumes that all wishes are selfish, and to be fair, all of ours are, but what if a child wished for their mother's cancer to be cured, or for world peace, or to never hear Coldplay again? We don't generally believe in the benevolence of humanity, but even we're not that jaded. And then there's the whole Steve Trevor returning in the stolen body of another man and carrying on a romantic relationship with Wonder Woman without consent. I mean, we're pretty sure we would have given consent, but you actually have to ask for it. That's pretty much how consent works. It also doesn't make sense why he came back in another body, except for plot contrivance in the first place. There was not one but two poorly developed villains, and one wished to be more like Diana, and somehow she turned into a human cheetah for reasons. After the really solid movie that was the first Wonder Woman, this was shockingly bad, and it made no sense because it had the same creators and a good cast. It's just too bad this team never got another shot at the film, because we would love to have seen them get back to form. Number 15, Black Adam. Before the release of this movie, if we were to make a list of actors that should play Black Adam, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would have topped most of these lists. Johnson has the physique of a superhero, can certainly play a taciturn anti-hero, let's be serious, those are literally all of his roles, and has a charisma and a humor to him that can be endearing. The fact that it was also a passion project for Johnson should have made this an instant blockbuster and the rejuvenating hit the DCEU needed. We can't tell you exactly what went wrong, but a kid actor was part of it. Bad writing was a part, and The Rock was a big part of it. We've seen Johnson act in the past, so we know he's more than capable of it, so we have no clue what he was going for here. Ostensibly, he just played himself, rather than a 5,000-year-old man out of time who was a former slave and one who had lost his son. None of that character was in the movie because we had to get to the quips and the one-liners. This was so bad that it killed any chance of the DCEU making a comeback, which is a shame. For one, we love the Justice Society of America, and while they weren't great in this, it was still awesome to see them on screen, and we doubt we'll see them in live action again anytime soon. Number 14, The Flash. We are one of the few people on this planet that liked Ezra Miller as the Flash. Yes, he was a little annoying and forced to be comic relief, but something about his performance in Justice League resonated with us. It seemed like someone who could move close to the speed of light would behave in a hyper manner and seem distracted. And then he got his own movie, and there were two of them in the film, and we just got this feeling that he went full Ezra, and you never go full Ezra. This movie is based on the Flashpoint story, which is an okay comic where Flash attempts to save his mother by changing the past. This is a supervillain plot, by the way, and pretty much what the Kingpin is trying to do in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Saving his mother wreaks havoc across the time stream, and Barry is forced to fix his mistakes at great personal cost. As we mentioned, two Ezra Millers is just too many. Their interactions become grating the longer the movie goes. The special effects are terrible, intentional or not, and the deviations from the Flashpoint story only serve to weaken the adaptation. This could have been a perfect goodbye to the DCEU and the birth of Gunn's DCU, but instead they gave us the middle finger with a joke about Batman and Robin. And that's what this movie is when all is said and done. A joke. Number 13, Shazam, Fury of the Gods. It seems like sequels really were the kiss of death in the DCEU. The first Shazam movie was solid, with a good villain, a clear narrative, and a good arc for our main hero. The sequel suffers for a variety of reasons, the first being expectations, as many believed The Rock's Black Adam would play a major role in the film, being that he is Captain Marvel's main foe. The Rock thought that this was beneath him, and this was a red flag right from the start. We instead got a trio of lesser villains, none of whom had ties to the source material, another red flag. Add to this that it was probably a mistake to grant the entire family powers in the first movie, since it dilutes the journey of our main hero, and because WB refuses to use Captain Marvel as Shazam's true name. Then consequently, none of the other kids had code names as a result, and we're left with more red flags than a communist rally. We end up with Gray Shazam or Purple Shazam like some weird watered-down Power Rangers, and who thought that was a good idea? Finally, we have no idea what character Zachary Levi was playing as Shazam, but it certainly wasn't the same one as Asher Angel's Billy Batson. Angel played Billy with a seriousness that completely goes away when the character becomes Shazam, and it suddenly quips and one-liners once again. This happened in the first movie as well, but it was much more jarring in the sequel. We definitely didn't need the wisdom of Solomon to see this was a bad movie, but we wish we had the speed of Mercury to run away from it. Number 12. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. The title alone deserves to be number 12 on this list. We really liked Margot Robbie as Harleen Quinzel in Suicide Squad. She did the voice that was reminiscent of the cartoon without being too annoying, which is no small feat, as well as adding her own spin to the character. That being said, we have no clue who thought this would be a good idea for a movie or what the target audience was. Like we said, we like Robbie as Harley, but would we have created an entire movie based on her single performance in Suicide Squad? An HBO Max series, maybe, but not an entire feature film. And the premise that Harley is heartbroken over Jared Leto's Joker just makes the character seem unbelievably pathetic. Worse yet, the movie attempted to portray Harley as a Jack Sparrow-type character, one that appeared aloof and unserious, but somehow brilliantly played her opponents to accomplish her goals. But Harley never comes off as brilliant, which would have been great if it worked, but she just comes off as lucky. The other birds are forgettable, which is truly a shame. If this had been spun off a Batman movie or been properly set up in any way, we really think it could have been something. Sadly, it's one of the weaker efforts in the DCEU. Number 11. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, yet another sequel and another poor effort from the DCEU. If we thought WB watered down Aquaman in the first movie, okay, who wrote that? Because you are getting a raise, my friend. Then this movie doubled down on that. Not only did it seem to have some type of quota on P jokes, but it was more Aqua Bra than Aquaman. All we wanted was some growth in the character, but in the intervening years since the last film, Aquaman has been married, had a child, and been the ruling king of Atlantis. But he hasn't changed at all, because we need the jokes and the bravado, and the kid is little more than a necessity of the plot, and poorly hidden at that. Then it becomes a fish out of water story, buddy comedy. Okay, that's gold, and you are definitely getting a raise. About Aquaman and the brother he sent to prison with all the laughs just packed right in. Abdul Mateen's Black Manta is the best part of the proceedings, but even he's discarded as a joke before the end credits finally put us out of our misery. Sadly, this was the last entry into the DCEU, and we didn't even feel bad watching it end. Number 10. Justice League. Having Joss Whedon attempt to finish a Zack Snyder film is like having Steven Spielberg finish a Stanley Kubrick movie. And that also happened. They are fundamentally different filmmakers with completely opposing approaches to tone and pacing. We don't always like Snyder, but you know what you're getting when you hire him. An edgelord, gritty, edgy film doused in Mountain Dew. WB saw Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and so they were perfectly aware of what was coming with Justice League. And then they decided that they wanted was a light, bright romp with the jokes. What we got was a Frankenstein's monster of a film where the tone shifts wildly from scene to scene, and we get a third act fight inside of a computer where someone forgot to remove the red gradient filter. The movie failed to please the Snyder fans, which led to WB acquiescing and releasing a Snyder cut of the Justice League on streaming, but it also failed to bring in the MCU audience that the studio wanted. This isn't a terrible film per se, it simply lacked a cohesive vision and suffered, as many films on this list do, from a studio that had no idea what it wanted at all. Number 9. Blue Beetle. This film should have been the Spider-Man / Ant-Man of the DCEU. Jaime Reyes is a new college grad when he takes a menial job to earn some money, and through circumstances chosen by the Blue Beetle Scarab as its next avatar. A young man given powers beyond mortal man that he has to learn how to use, and then choose whether to use them responsibly is a tried and true comic book trope we don't mind seeing. Add to this the nods to Ted Kord and the legacy behind the Blue Beetle moniker, and let's just say that our geek hearts were a Twitter. But all that promise was just that. Promise. As much as we wanted to love this movie, so much of it was just forgettable. We honestly don't remember the villains, except that the main henchman wore red, and Susan Sarandon was there. Reyes' family played almost completely for comic relief, bordered on straight-up caricatures, and the attempts at humor were grating at best and really annoying at times. We applaud the DCEU's shared attempt to bring Reyes as Blue Beetle into the universe, but this is exactly why the term is shared universe. If any property could have used a boost from a stronger property, it's a niche character like Blue Beetle. Just remember that Marvel used Iron Man to boost Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man, one of the most recognized characters on the planet. This was an attempt to scrub the mistakes Sony had made with the character and to give him the MCU rub. But whatever the reason, it worked, and the Spider-Man relaunch has gone spectacularly, or amazingly, depending on your point of view. James Gunn has not ruled out Blue Beetle being part of the new DCU, so we may see Jaime Reyes again soon, and we hope it's under better circumstances. Number 8. Suicide Squad. This may be the worst film on this list that we love. First, we love the concept of Task Force X, a group of supervillains forced to carry out government missions against other supervillains under the penalty of death with mini-bombs implanted in their skulls. That's just a great concept. It's just too bad this movie was edited with a chainsaw. We've discussed ad nauseum how this film was taken away from David Ayer and cut by the same people who did the Bohemian Rhapsody Squad trailer, so we won't belabor that here, but it really is a shame that we'll never see the director's original vision. The plot here makes no sense, such as the danger that Waller attempts to warn the government of is a danger of her own creation. And worse yet, it's not even a false flag attempt. She was literally dumb enough to almost be killed by her own plot, and that's not Waller. Davis is always awesome despite the silly writing, Smith is great as Deadshot, and we really like Robbie as Harley, and the rest of the cast all put in good performances. Suicide Squad is definitely flawed, but it always entertains us, so we're always there to watch it again. Number 7. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is not really a bad movie, but rather a movie that was made too soon. It's emblematic of the problem with the DCEU and how they wanted an instant shared universe without the grind that the MonsterVerse or the MCU put in. This movie cribs the plot of the Dark Knight Returns comic without understanding what made that comic work. This is actually no surprise, as David Goyer has been stealing Frank Miller and Alan Moore plots for his Batman scripts and passing it off as his own work for 20 years now. Not understanding the source material forces Goyer and Snyder to come up with silly reasons for the heroes to fight, like the Batman declaring that if there's even a 1% chance that Superman could go bad, that they have to treat it as an absolute certainty. And kill him? That's Judge Death, Mr. Goyer, not Batman. Then, realizing they couldn't use Batman faking his death as an ending, they were forced to come up with the universally panned Martha contrivance. And then they shoehorned the entire Doomsday storyline into this movie as well, something that deserved perhaps its own movie, but certainly more room to breathe. Still not convinced of its place on this list? Well, we haven't even mentioned Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, which could easily take worst casting decision in this universe if Jared Leto didn't already run away with that award. Basically, this was a movie that needed build. It should have been the 10th or the 15th film in the DCEU, not the second, and the rush to make it reeked of desperation. Number 6. Aquaman. We would have never cast Jason Momoa in the role of Arthur Curry, opting for someone who more traditionally embodies the role, and we couldn't have been more wrong. Momoa was a stroke of genius in casting, giving Aquaman an instantly more serious and badass demeanor. An absolutely brilliant bit of casting that apparently no one else at Warner Brothers, from the writers to the directors, could see. Or perhaps this was the Marvel effect. WB saw the success of the light-hearted nature of the MCU with the humor baked right in, and like Suicide Squad, made sure that Aquaman told a requisite amount of jokes. The problem is that Aquaman has generally been a joke in the public consciousness, and if any movie needed to be a darker, more hard-edged look at a character, it should have been the tattooed Jason Momoa starring Aquaman. They should have plumbed the depths of the DC archives and read the Peter David Aquaman run, because that just went hard. We're not saying that Aquaman should have lost his hand to piranhas and replaced it with a hook, but we're also not saying it, if you get our drift. Seriously, these puns are just writing themselves at this point. Even the movie we got was better than most of the DCEU, but it's still just a shame that there was so much more on the table that we could have had with this movie. Number 5. Shazam. As much as we like this movie, our question is, why? Captain Marvel, and yes, his name is Captain Marvel, and if you're such cowards you won't even use his name, then don't do the movie in the first place. But Captain Marvel is ostensibly a magical Superman. So why the rush to introduce the character when there are so many other characters in your catalog that don't bear a strong resemblance to the Man of Steel? From Justice League pillars like Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Captain Atom, and Booster Gold, to smaller characters like John Constantine and Zatanna, to entire teams like the Titans, Justice League Dark, or even Wildcats, Stormwatch, or the Authority, yes, we love the 90s unapologetically. Yes, an adult-looking superhero who is secretly a child is a great vehicle for a kid-friendly movie, but then we have to question scenes like buying alcohol and visiting a gentleman's club. It's a mixed message, to be sure. But this is still a solid film with a great arc for its main character that encompassed the meaning of family, friendship, and what it means to be a hero. This is easily one of the strongest films in the DCEU, even though we don't believe it should have been made before other films. Number 4. Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is easily the better version of the movie, which gives us both a glimpse at the Earth of the past, where Darkseid once fought the Earth's ancient protectors, and the post-apocalyptic world of the future as humanity mounts its last stand. More than any film, or rather all other 15 movies in this universe combined, the Snyder Cut actually presented a roadmap, or some sort of vision for the DCEU to follow, rather than a haphazard collection of movies. So why isn't it number 1? Because it's 214 minutes long, and some of us have work in the morning, Zack. It's not just the length, but the insane padding. There is no reason the movie needed to be this long, and if it did, then perhaps it should have been 2 films. Despite being superior to the Whedon cut, we're fairly certain the Snyder cut wouldn't have fared any better at the box office. It seemed like a cut made specifically for streaming that casual theatrical audiences would have had difficulty tolerating. Even Avengers Endgame, the culmination of a 21-movie saga, managed to come in at 181 minutes, a full 33 minutes shorter than the Snyder Cut. But despite its flaws, like the woman who smelled Aquaman's sweater, or Wonder Woman vaporizing a bank robber, we're happy to have seen a glimpse of where the DCEU might have gone if it had a more cohesive vision. We were also happier with this than whatever Rebel Moon was, because we're still not over that travesty. Number 3. The Suicide Squad. We like the Ayer Suicide Squad that was viciously edited in the back alley like it owed someone money, so obviously we were going to like this far superior version. It borrowed a lot from the early Ostrander run of Suicide Squad and wore its comic book roots on its sleeve, and that was a breath of fresh air. The movie is brutally violent, but never in a mean-spirited way, if that makes any sense. You almost feel bad for laughing at the violence, but it is genuinely funny, and it's funny in a natural way, not in that Hollywood style where you know some script doctor was brought in to add some jokes. If we have a complaint, it's with Robbie's Harley. We still like her as Harley Quinn here, but it feels as if her part was lengthened commensurate to her star power, rather than what the story called for. In fact, if you take away the majority of her subplot, the movie runs smoother and feels more focused. Another nitpick would have to be in the character of Bloodsport. Idris Elba is a god among men, and we'd let him slap us for saying this, but we're going to say it anyway. They should have kept Deadshot. Yes, Mr. Elba was supposed to play a recast Deadshot since Will Smith was unavailable, but superficially changing the character to Bloodsport while keeping it exactly like Deadshot was a silly move. On a positive side, this is apparently canon in James Gunn's DCU, so it may work out in a convoluted multiversal way someday. Now, before we get to the top 2 entries on our list, we'd just like to say that if you've gotten this far and you like what you see, please go down there and hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We love doing this stuff for you, and you've helped the channel grow so much. We've got the 1-minute comic book reviews, the 1-minute movie reviews and television reviews, and the tier list, as well as the trailer breakdowns. So, join us on the only channel by geeks for geeks, and remember, we love you guys. Thanks for checking out the channel. Number 2. Man of Steel. If there is anything we lament about the end of the DCEU, it's that we'll never get a sequel to Man of Steel. The movie is riddled with flaws, sure, from Pa Kent's main lesson to a young Clark being, yes, you can save lives, but what do you owe these people? To sacrificing himself when Clark could have probably found about 50 different ways to save him, to engaging in a battle in the middle of Metropolis that easily killed thousands without even attempting to move to a less densely populated area. We weren't even going to bring up Soup's killing Zod because we don't even have an issue with Superman killing, but if you're going to do it, it should be like that Avengers Assemble moment. It should be built up to. This was the first Cavill Superman movie, and this was his first fight. The character wasn't even using the Superman name yet, so the moment held little impact except to be edgy just for the sake of it. It was also a bit morose for a Superman film, but those scenes on Krypton were insanely cool and a nice break from the Donner vision that has been the dominant interpretation since the 1970s. We're also huge fans of Cavill, and we think he did about as well as anyone would have given the material. We would have loved to see a Man of Steel 2, and with a couple of tonal adjustments, we believe it could have brought the DCEU back into the light. Number 1. Wonder Woman. What makes me so very happy about this pick is that we're sure we won't get any hate over it. But we're not here for the adulation or to make any easy choices. We're here to crawl through the trenches and come out the other side with the best movie, and this is it. This film is not only true to Wonder Woman as a character, it manages to walk the fine line of a woman raised to be a warrior, but one that seeks peace. I often wondered why the film was set during World War I when World War II is generally more popular amongst the viewing public, and I realized it was a brilliant choice. World War II has no shades of gray in the public. It is clearly a battle between good and evil. As Diana's journey is one about understanding man and the nature of war, a conflict with less clearly defined heroes and villains was perfect. There are some truly beautiful set pieces in the film, and while we don't think Miss Gadot would ever win an Oscar, she pulls off what's required of her. The movie does fall apart in the third act as all subtlety and nuance is thrown aside in favor of a CGI fight scene, but it doesn't undo all the good work that came before it. Wonder Woman is the best the DCEU ever put forward, and if we had more films like it and less films like its sequel, we'd be on Man of Steel 4 by now and complaining the universe had overstayed its welcome. And that's our list. Disagree? Hit us up in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We love you guys, and remember, it can't rain all the time.